Coming up next on The Health Hustle.
You can have everything. You just can't have it all at once. And I would repeat that over and over again. You can have everything. You just cannot have it all at once. I would take that to the younger version, stamp that in, and just tell myself, things are not going away. Just focus on one thing and keep doing it until it gets to the point of an end. And you've said, this is it. Now move on to the next. You don't have to worry about the fact that you're not working on this other thing. Just take it one thing at a time.
Hey folks, and welcome to the Health Hustle of Austin, Texas. On this show, we uncover the big ideas from your fellow health and fitness entrepreneurs in the Austin, Texas area about how they built their business and the lessons they learned along the way. What's up, y'all? Corey here, and on this episode, I had a chance to sit down with my buddy Yash Chitneni, also known as the Serendipity Guy. A question that we answer on this episode is the overlap between fitness and content creation, which is totally my world. Some of the things that we get into specifically, though, are what it was like growing up in India, when he discovered the American dream, getting bullied in high school, what it means to carve your own path, moving to Austin, Texas, becoming a content creator, coffee shop lessons, specifically Cosmic Coffee, if you're familiar with that one, following your curiosities, Serendipity and the Serendipity Chronicles, JOMO, some of you might know what that is, a rapid fire question round, and so much more. One last thing, if you're a health or fitness professional and you're having difficulties getting leads, one of the most common reasons that I see this is not having a well-defined niche. If you go to the link in the description, I have a free 3-step process that walks you through exactly how to get clarity on which niche is best suited for you and your business. Without further ado, let's go. Yash Chitneni, welcome to the show. How you doing, brother?
Phenomenal. Thanks for having me, Corey.
What did the ocean say to the beach?
It's getting wavy out here.
That's really close, actually. Yeah, just waved. Nothing.
I waved.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nothing. Just waved.
You got me fooled up because you asked, what did it say? So now I was like very much thinking, I have to let you know what it says.
Well, welcome to the show. I'm excited about this episode because you bring together 3 things that I find very interesting in a human, and I think people are going to get just a lot of value out of it. Is you seem to have this circling of a builder, a creator, a tech guy with a background in computer science and all this knowledge in AI, and then you've also found yourself in just the health and fitness space of all these people here that we work with in Austin. And so those 3 things coming together is going to be a fun conversation. I think we can learn a lot from you. So I'm excited. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, me too. I feel like it's been like this pillars that I've been able to build up through time. And that was hugely influential because of where I find myself and the people I've surrounded myself with to allow me to find those interests and go deeper into it. And I'd say the 3 things that you just labeled out stand out because of surrounding myself, in essence, with that.
And I think it's important for people to be clear of that, right? Is like to know what your differentiators are. And those are very big differentiators for you. And so something that I really want to cover in this conversation, which we're going to get to through the course of this entire conversation, is essentially just how serendipity of the universe has showed up in such unique and interesting and positive ways in your life. And before we get into too much of all those different unique moments in your life, I want to go back to ground zero of growing up in India. I admittedly don't know a lot of people that have grown up in India or anything really about it. And so I'm just curious as to, do you feel like now today there's things from that upbringing until you were 11 years old that shaped kind of who you are today in terms of what you do?
Yes, to the part that there are things that I hold on to that I want to kind of shed. The parts that I feel that I hold on to are the lens of gauge of success that I got created when I was young. You know, when you are young as a child, you kind of come up with the own constructs of what you want to be. And I remember filling out my forms when I was young saying, what is it that I want to be when I grow up? And I used to write footballer or soccer player, I suppose. And that was me in my early childhood. But as things went along in India, in Eastern culture, school is very much predominantly like used all over as a metric of, are you good in life? And I chose to go down the path of working a traditional 9 to 5, being a software engineer, product manager, XYZ, and, going down or up, pardon me, the corporate ladder. And I've left it. But there are days when I have some doubts creep in when, as an entrepreneur, things go south. So I would say, for me to have that thought process, it goes all the way back to my childhood of, growing up and being surrounded for so much of my life. And, even now, like family, it's not like my family's not Indian, it's the culture still exists. So it takes a lot of time to like rewrite cultural identities. So I'd say like that is probably a huge thing as to what holds me, the gauge of how success is viewed in the business world. But from a non-business standpoint, I would say from the Western side, the culture, like now what I really love about my life that I have is the amount of time that I get to put aside for my family. And I think that culturally, like growing up, it's huge there to be like, I've got my grandparents kind of living in the same home as me. I've got my family around, like kind of like constantly have family around and whatnot. So moving to the States, through time, I moved from California out to Texas. My family stayed out in Nevada and we were split. And
can I pause you? What was the catalyst for even coming over to the States? Because you said you moved here when you were 11 years old. What was the reason?
My parents, my dad took a sacrifice to give up the life that he had built in India to say, I want to provide even better opportunity for my kids and my kids' kids. And my dad moved out here and wanted to start a job in the software world. And to start off, he wasn't able to land it because of the logistics of being able to get a working visa and then being sponsored, XYZ, and all that goes into like a green card and all that. And then he had to start out by just working at a 7-Eleven for a bit, even though he had all the skill sets to be able to work as a software engineer. And so for a while, he was just doing that in Kentucky, and while being able to find people that he could reach out to, XYZ, and he took the risk and, came halfway across the world, and he started working here for a bit, 2 years prior to us moving.
So was he not around when you were living in California? You said he was in Kentucky?
So that was prior to me moving to the States. He moved here 2002-ish, 2001.
Oh, he came over beforehand,
Correct.
Basically trying to make money, wanting to support the family more, make a better living.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
And then it was my mom, sister, and I that moved here in 2004. And then we moved out to California, and by that time he was out in California. And he'd landed a job where he was able to work and get sponsored for the green card, and from the green card on towards citizenship and whatnot. And then that gave stability for us. And it still had its nuances of like being complicated, because that's a whole different topic of like how the immigration system works.
Totally. So what was your first experience like then coming to America?
I moved here on July 4th, 2004. So get off the plane and I'm like, walk out. It's midday and I'm like, oh my God, this place is super clean. I was like, this is like the future. Like, whoa, this is like ridiculous. And we drive. It's San Francisco. We get to Sunnyvale and highways. That's not a thing that I'd seen before. I was like, my God, this is crazy. Like how big this place is and like how many like trees just being surrounded in the Bay Area is full of trees. And it threw me for a loop. And then came nighttime and the sky was lit up with fireworks. And I was like, what? This place is a party? Like I did not know anything about 4th of July being Independence Day.
Is this every day?
I was like, this country is lit. Like I love it.
You guys know how to party.
Exactly. I loved it. My first day, I was blown away. It felt like a celebration. I was like, I came to this, we talked about like you're going to the other side of the world because there's this dream. There's this American dream. And like coming there and like physically like seeing it with the eyes of like these celebrations up in the skies, it was kind of like, whoa, like, this is cool.
Did you have a good experience then coming to America, like even as an 11-year-old and like all through high school? Did it feel like home to you? Did it feel like a place that you decided like this is where I want to spend the rest of my life?
Middle school is a very tough time to move. Middle school is when a lot of people get bullied. I moved here with a very thick accent, and I got it bullied out of me. I sounded very Indian. And in middle school, that was when you sound different, you look different, you're going to get called out for
Sure.
it. And I got called out for it a good amount, and it wasn't great. I was like, this is not fun at all. And I went and bought a cassette tape. I would put this cassette tape that would teach me how to speak in an American accent. So I would just come back from school, put the tape in, play it, practice, figure out how to roll my R's, figure out how to actually phonetically pronounce various words. And my first year, I was in Sunnyvale in one town. And then the second year, 7th grade, we moved to another town. And by the time that year took place, I got rid of my accent and I sound the way I do now.
Mm.
And then we met up at some track meet events with kids from the old school, and they met me like a year or two from then, and they saw and they were like, what? You sound different. And I was like, I know. And that was crazy. I got my accent to get bullied out of me. So my first year was kind of ifs and buts, but I started finding myself after that. After, I started sounding the way I do now, then I was like, this is great. Like, I love this life. I was able to explore so much of myself in a unique way.
That says a lot about your tenacity and your ability to work through an accent like that. That's really interesting. Accents are very interesting to me because I remember when I was living in Iowa for a minute, they even called me out. I'm from Minnesota originally, and they even called me out one state away. They're like, where are you from? Like, what? Like, the way you pronounce, like, a strong Minnesota accent is we drag our O's, like, really hard. Like, get on the boat or hang out with the moose or go play some hockey is like we drag our O's really, really hard. And I remember getting called out on that even in Iowa, and I was like, what? Like, I have an accent? Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's crazy to me. And so now I'm just, like, a lot more aware of it. It doesn't bug me at all, I'm sure, but, like, it is interesting. The accent is very interesting to me because I thought they were kind of something that was more or less stuck with you, but you were able to work through that. That says a lot about just your tenacity. Have you always been that kind of person to just, like, work through things like that?
Yeah, I'd say, like, when you made the introduction for me being a builder, creator, I tend to look at something, and if it's something that I want to acquire, I try and reverse engineer it. And in that essence, in that example, it was like, I want to acquire not being bullied because this is the reason. So I was like, what can I do? Then I got that and just put it in and did that. And then there's various examples through life where it was like, okay, I have, a few problems here that I want to solve. So I want to start solving it myself. And that led to, when I get to college, and we can talk about that lens where I got into computer science, and I was like, okay, now I have like kind of like a superpower, so I can do something digitally. What is it that I want to solve for? Well, man, I feel like I operate off of the mode of not laziness, but how is it that I could keep doing the things that I want to keep doing versus like spend as little time on things that I don't want to. So tenacity, I think, probably drives me on the positive side to get rid of that. But if you look at it from a root factor, it's like, man, I really don't want to spend time doing this other thing because I really don't like that other thing. So a huge example for me in that essence connected to tenacity was I loved music all my life. Never had any introduction to music from a formal education. I never, in middle school, high school, took any classes of any sorts, but it was just like constantly listening to music, and that just was like my vibe. So I get to college, and we have Spotify come through in that time period, and I'm very much always just listening to Spotify all the time while I'm working. And I would keep working, listen to Spotify, but at the same time I'd be like, I don't like this song. I like this song. I want this song. And it just got to the point where I was like, I'm spending so much time on like trying to change these songs while also simultaneously working as a college kid. So my brain just had this random idea saying, what if I don't have to spend my time having to go back onto this tab, having to figure out, searching this song, hitting next, hitting all of this. What if I could make my life easier so that I can keep working and just do this? So I decided, let me build voice control for Spotify. And this was back in 2014-ish, I think, or 13, 14. And now, obviously, we have, Hey Siri, Alexa, Hey Google, and all of that. But like 2014, we did not have this. I was just on the space of, okay, I don't like doing this. Can I figure out a way? Because voice exists as a thing. So there's got to be a way to do this. So I geeked out a bit, used my newfound computer science powers, I suppose, and was like, all right, let me just figure out if I can take my text based off what I say, convert it into text, and then figure out if I could put that into Spotify. So I built a Chrome extension, and I just like hacked into Spotify's thing, but I couldn't do it in their app. So I had to build a Chrome extension to use it for the web developer or the web app. And I started controlling it that way. And I was like, this is cool. Like now I can keep working on my stuff. And I started just like using, hey, Spotify, play this song, do this, do that. And yeah, I thought it was cool.
Yash, the original Siri.
Exactly.
Should have patented that shit, man.
That's funny. My sister's name is Siri.
Did not know that. That's cool, man. Somebody recently told me that entrepreneurship feels like it's like one of my favorite words. Like I just use that word a lot. And I think the reason that I use that word a lot is because it encompasses more or less a mentality more than anything, is that you're a problem solver, right? And that's one of my favorite characteristics about people is that they see a problem, there isn't yet a solution, and they just try to figure out how to be the solution to that problem. To me, that's what that word encompasses, and that's so much of obviously why you're here doing what you are now today with all the things of content and podcasting. And so I'd be curious as to when do you feel like you kind of adopted that mentality? Because I know I didn't have it for a long time. I know what sounds similar to you is that you grow up in a certain culture and around certain people where you're more checking the boxes and doing the thing. And there was for sure a tipping point in my life where like that flipped for me, where I stopped looking for other people of like what I should be doing or what the approval is. And so I'm curious for you is like, when did that shift happen for you, of that mentality shift of I have the capacity to build and create my own things. I don't need to be told what to do by my boss at the computer science job or whatever it is.
I think through time I kept having too many like small data points add up. I would get in way too many arguments with my family over details of my next path. When it was me getting towards college, I wanted to do broadcast journalism. I was like, I'm really good at understanding sports. I can talk about sports really well. I can write pretty well, and I want to do this. My parents were like, that's a no.
They told you no?
Yep.
Wow.
They said that they are not going to support me at all in college in any way if I am going to not do anything but engineering. And this was a huge, argument that played out over a span of a couple months as I decided to go to college and ended up eventually doing computer science. And looking back at it, I thank my family a lot for it, because I think inherently my mind is very creative. And I think going through a formal education of computer science allowed me to now start adding logical-based thinking onto it. And I'm very grateful for that, because I think just repeatedly sitting there and like thinking about how computers work, and you're just programmatically figuring out what is one lead to the next. So I think my thought process matured a lot from my formal education in computer science. And I just always found myself thinking about grand endeavors and ambitions. I was like, there's got to be this problem, I could do that. And it just felt that my parents found me to be slightly an oddball. They were like, why are you like always got this like crazy idea? It's some crazy idea. So I've always had this like thing for just like trying something random, bizarro. And then we talked about it at the start of this episode. It's what you surround yourself with. And when I got to school in Texas, this is funny, my first year in Texas, similar to my first year in California, I despised it, did not like it. I did not feel like I was in a good fit. I didn't find my community of people. And I was just felt like a cast out. And then my second year, I found a great group of people. And there I started connecting with one of my dearest friends, Sam, who I had on my own podcast, I think, as episode number 2. He dropped out after I became good friends with him. And I was like, what? That's crazy. You dropped out? And he was like a huge tick in the lens for me, where the both of us together had a college radio show. And we'd sit there. It was a 2-hour show. For the first hour, it was just playing music that does not make the top 100. And then afterwards, it was like, well, what do we do like now? And I was like, okay, let's just talk. So we started talking. Did not know what podcasting was. So we would just sit there, talk about random topics, and tell our friends to tune in. It was cool. It was good fun. And then I was like, man, we just talked about so many like random ideas and how things could get built, products, etc. And I was like, it always felt fun. But then he made the jump where he was like, I can't do this anymore at school. And then I was like, whoa, that's crazy. He just said like, nah. But I couldn't because of, cultural, familiar, all that, those reasons. So I stuck with my path. And as I kept going, it was just like the Spada voice. That's what it was called. Spada voice. And then a few other.
That's why I didn't go big. It's a terrible branding, bro. It's a terrible Siri is way better than Spada voice. But anyways, go keep going.
I ended up doing a few other projects here and there, and it got good feedback. And I was like, man, it feels like people appreciate these random ideas that get built out. So it seems like there's something there. And I got into the traditional 9-to-5 world, and it was just meeting people outside of work that kept giving me this spark, this inspiration of like, man, I feel like people are inspiring me based off my own behavior and how I'm able to connect with others, and then just seeing someone else just talk about their own dreams. So I wouldn't say it was any one thing, but like, things just build up through time that you keep chipping away at. And it chipped away to the point where I moved to Austin in 2018, September. And I would say Austin is probably, if you were going to look at it as like, what is the one thing? Like, it's like that marble that you're like cracking away for a long time, and then you have to just hit this one right spot, and it's finally like dismantles. Austin was that dismantling for me. I moved here, and I bought a house. I was 24, 25. I was able to buy a house because of my 9-to-5 job. I was doing really well financially, and
You were still working as a software engineer at this point?
I was working as a software engineer at this point, but now for a consulting firm. And then I moved into recently a product manager.
Got it.
And things were going great. And then I moved here, and I was just like, I was working on the side. I picked up a camera like 2017, 2018-ish, because my roommate and my dear friend, his dad was an underwater photographer. And he was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to...
This Brian?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I'm going to the Cayman Islands, and we're going to do some stuff. And I was like, dude, this sounds crazy. Like, what? So I was like, all right, I got to get myself a camera. And picked up a camera, started, like, doing things there and just connecting with more people. And when it came to Austin, it was like a wildfire of energy. a wildfire that I'd not felt before, because the entire time of my life, I just felt like I feel left out. I feel like I have these ideas and this ambition stuff, and I want to talk and connect with people, but it's like sparse here and there. But it came to Austin, and it was like, people were like, no, like, yes, keep doing this. And I was like, what am I doing over there? I feel like I'm just burning myself. Like, I'm not living a fulfilled life. And I moved to Austin, did a few projects. The very first project was with Francesca Martinez, with a course that we created called Animal Flow.
Before we get into that,
Yeah.
can we cover real quick about the marathon side of things and the content creation that you did from that side of things? And just to wrap up, because I want to wrap up some of the things that you pulled from this, because this is really, really good. So one of the things that I found really interesting is that you naturally have a proclivity to being more creative, big thinking, pulling back, but you were essentially jammed into this logical left brain world where you're forced to like work through these processes. And so like that's a really interesting overlap, which obviously says a lot to who you are now today, of being somebody that's a content creator, but also like very interested in artificial intelligence and like just the overlap of how you take creative endeavors and basically create systems around them to make them logical. So I think that's a really unique skill set, and I think that's super cool. And then the other thing too is that from the radio show side of things, that's a cool outlet of, I feel like that's what feels like some of the birthing of the serendipity of what you do now today, and why that's such a big pillar in your life, is like that was you literally just talking about random topics and hoping people would listen and just like following your curiosities. And now obviously here today you have your own podcast show, which is obviously, I'm sure, no surprise, like looking back at the serendipities of life. But yeah, I just wanted to recap that for people and then kind of pull back a little bit on, because I think there was a piece where some of the content creation was like you met somebody in the fitness space, right? Was like a part of how you kind of got into some of this content stuff.
Yeah. Originally, the dream was that I latched onto, inspired by Brian. Brian and I worked together at Fidelity Investments, a financial firm. And then he ended up quitting less than 6 months into our work life. He was like, I just can't do this thing. He worked, admittedly, a much different role and whatnot. And then he quit that because he was like, I'd rather just be going to the islands, scuba diving. And I saw that and I was like, okay, like, what? This is crazy. So you're going to this resort and you're filming stuff and you're going to give this resort some content, and the resort is going to compensate for you staying there and then also pay you for some stuff.
Dream.
Yeah, I was like, this is
dream gig.
Sounds amazing.
If you're into scuba diving anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
But
and I was like, that sounds crazy. Like, I want to travel the world. I want to like go diving. I don't have a diving certification, but I would love to get one. And like, I saw the photos of, the reefs, the animals underneath the oceans, and I was like, this is crazy, dude. Let's make this happen. What has to happen, And I was young. I had ambitions, but I wasn't necessarily fully like understanding how to get all the business side of things rolling. So I got myself a camera, and then to get things rolling, it was like, all right, content marketing is a thing. The vehicle that we looked at was content marketing for resorts. That's the goal, to get towards there. But like, I can't just like, in my logical thing, I have a 9 to 5. I can't just up and like get to a resort right now, book a flight and all this stuff. So it was like, okay, how do we build ourselves up there? So to do content marketing, so we started running. Through a coworker at work, he knew that I got a camera and took some photos around here and there, and he enjoyed it. And he was like, dude, my sister is a real estate agent. She needs her house like filmed for. You guys have a drone, right? Could you do that? Like, okay, cool. Let's do that. And one thing led to another, and one realtor connected us to the other. And then it kept just getting bigger and bigger. And like, we started just doing a lot of real estate gigs. And then it got to the point I was like, it's fun, but like, I go into a house and the house is kind of empty and I shoot a bunch of stuff. And I was like, I wanted to do this because I kind of wanted to connect with people. This is not really a whole lot of connecting. Like, I love just being able to talk to the realtor. It's great, but I'm not like getting this like connection throughout the process and whatnot. And then there's one guy, can't recall his name right now, was like, hey man, I'm training for a marathon and I would want to capture my training process. Can you shoot a video for me?
Nick Bear. Was his name Nick Bear?
If it was Nick Bear, I would be in a different place.
I'm just kidding. Anybody who doesn't know Nick Bear, he owns BPN. It's a big supplement company here in Austin. But yeah, keep going.
I ended up filming for this guy, and he, just an average Joe, honestly. And he just wanted to document his stuff. And he was like, I've got money. I want to pay for this video. I want to document this thing. Can someone else shoot this for me? Did it. And he wasn't like a fitness influencer. Just an average Joe who just wanted to document the thing. But I filmed that, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. If this guy, who is not even like an actual person in the fitness industry, is doing this, there's got to be people in the fitness industry who are going to want to use content to be able to do this. I was like, now this feels like a connection, because the entire time I was with him, I was kind of like shooting some stuff that was like, he was like, oh, I'm going to go on this part of the run on this part of the lake, and then over here tie my shoelace. And I was like, you know, this seems cool. Like, I'm able to like creatively like come up with some stuff with this guy. And then it was kind of like, wait a second, this is, the fitness industry is cool. This works. And I had a horrible back injury that held me back for about 2.5 years when I was in Dallas coming to Austin. Between 2016 to 2018, I suffered from sciatica, back pain, and it was debilitating. It was so horrible to the point that I was like not able to walk or even sit. I was kind of like lost in two worlds. None of the options were really fun. And I ended up just having a not great time, and I was trying any solution to get myself out of this funk. And I was like, I have to figure out how I could do this. So I did a bunch of rehab, did all these things, and that started telling me like, I want to, you know, better take care of my body so I can get rid of this pain. And it was just like a factor that was like, get in towards fitness, surround yourself with all these other people, you know. So I came to Austin, and that little connection with that person, my own backstory of my back,
Literal backstory.
exactly, was like the seeds that were planted for me to be like, okay, I'm going to go into this space. And immediately, first thing that I did when I came here, led with my curiosity to the first person who ever introduced me to podcasts. And he was a friend who lived in Austin. And I was like, all right, well, you introduced me to podcasts way back in the day, and that's just given me a wealth of knowledge. Like, let's hang out, and you're in the fitness space. Turns out he was working at On It. And On It in 2019 was like the place in Austin, in the fitness world. Robert, if you're listening to this, it's been a long time. We should reconnect. But through Robert, went to On It, checked out the space, and then got connected with Francesca, who was the very first fitness content creator, fitness influencer, fitness like professional that I'd come across to work along with. And we kind of like looked at what is the goal and where are we trying to go. And it was like, let's go digital. Let's create a course, and let's allow people to be able to get this online course. And she had a very unique value proposition. She was doing animal flow. I was like, this is some fitness stuff that doesn't exist. At least in my worldview, like I'd never come across this thing.
Very Austin is what it is.
Yeah. Very Austin.
Yeah.
And so we're like, let's do this. And I remember we planned out building a website. We built a website, then built a course. And she came up with like the modules. We filmed it. We rented an Airbnb, shot the stuff, and then we started creating content to promote it. Made a free course so that we can push the free course. And then that got me into like email marketing and learning some of that stuff. And, you know, it's just kind of like became like, all right, here's this person who wants to now go digital because she has kind of some in-person things, but she's like, how do I just attract more people not having to be in person? And that just like led me to learning a slew of skills. And most of those skills came from me going to some random coffee shops and then just talking to people because they had their laptops open. And I saw some stuff that I felt like I looked up the day before on my own laptop. So I was like, dude, what are you looking at?
OnlyFans? Is that what you're finding?
Exactly.
Stumbling upon other people on OnlyFans? No, I'm just kidding. Oh, I love that site. I subscribe to a whole bunch of people.
I've actually got my own page.
Yeah,
You got to subscribe to that.
It's all feet, but you should check it out.
It's all accents. I do different accents there.
Okay, hold on though. Before we get to this, because this is really interesting actually. For you, again, that word came to mind, tenacity, to just go to a coffee shop and find random people that of skills you want to learn. Love that. But before I do, I want to come back to that kind of story you were telling. So like you, I'm a very curious person. And so there was 3 things I wanted to come back to. I wrote a couple notes here. One of them is, first question, how many drones have you lost/destroyed in your lifetime? I want to start there.
That is a very painful question. I have lost in the last year 2 drones.
Okay. I thought it was way more than that. I know there's been a few hiccups with that, with your recent travels. Scuba diving. Do you remember your first experience scuba diving? And did it go well?
My first experience, I suppose, was getting certified, and I got certified in Lake Travis.
Oh, dope.
And getting certified in Lake Travis, it's murky water, so you can't really see past like 6 to 8 feet. It's a cool experience because I had not really been out in the ocean prior. So I was just like, whoa, this is sick, like being able to do this. But yeah, it was all right. But my first experience itself, I made it out to the Keys, and the Keys were, I was like, this is pretty cool, but it seems kind of dead. So unfortunately, in the U.S., we've got the Florida Keys as one of the great spots for us to dive, but unfortunately the coral reefs have been affected there. So it's kind of bleak. And then until I went to Cozumel in Mexico, that's when you're like, oh my God, this is how things are supposed to look. This is greenery. This is like coral life. This is how it looks to have so many different, animals, ecosystem of underwater species just exist. So I would say until I got there, the ones in Florida are all right compared to.
So the reason I wanted to bring that up and talk about it real quick, and so I apologize to anybody listening to this episode for this real quick tangent, but I just find scuba diving, since I've just recently done it for the first time ever with that guy's trip down to Cozumel, Mexico, and I'm not certified. I've never been certified. I've never been scuba diving in my entire life, and it was just a profound experience of personal growth and development for me, because it's scary. And it's anxiety ridden, and it's challenging mentally in a lot of ways. Physically, you're not really doing that much.
You're floating.
You're literally floating, and you're learning how to control your breath because your breath gives you buoyancy underwater. But in the actual aspect of the mental games that you play, that was profound for me. And so that's why I wanted to ping you on that real quick, is like, I would argue, I think it's kind of like, for me now, on that list of skydiving or some of your more challenging things like mentally in life, is that I think most people should do it because it teaches you a lot about yourself. And so,
yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. I think that one of the things that it teaches me about myself, my ADD brain, is patience, because I think you have about an hour on a tank, 45 minutes to an hour when you go underneath. And in that time period, it's like, you just have to slow everything down for you to be able to go closer towards the hour than to the 45 minutes, because your dive time is determined by how much oxygen you've got left. So if you're pretty much out of gas in your tank, you're going to have to come up. And for that to happen, you have to learn to be very present, learn to be very just slow. And, if you see a bunch of stuff, like I remember the first few times I was like, oh God, there's something happening there. I'm like freaking out internally. And I'm like, I remember the first time that I saw a shark. This was in my trip to Florida, correct. And it was a nurse shark that had swam right underneath me, and I was not even diving yet. I literally just got off the boat into the water, and I'm getting ready to descend. And as I'm getting ready to descend, I just put my goggles, look down underneath, waiting for others to get in. And the nurse shark swims through, and I can, to this day, just feel my heart rate just go up. It was so fast, but the presence of it and just focusing on that and not thinking about, my God, are there more? Is that going to happen? Just being on that slowed it back down. And I was like, all right, wow, this was crazy how much I was just breathing in and out in just literally that 1 microsecond. So, yeah, the biggest lesson for me is you have to learn to be very present, and that's been calming for me.
Yeah, I agree in so many ways. And this is totally random, but for the other entrepreneurs out there listening to this episode, an idea I've had, and this is probably, I'm sure there's reasons why it hasn't, or maybe it does exist and I just don't know it. I wish there was a scuba tank that you could breathe through your nose, because I honestly don't like the aspect of breathing through my mouth just in general. And even from just a base physiology standpoint, it's harder to be calm when you're breathing through your mouth versus breathing through your nose. So I kind of wish there was a component of why don't they have a tank where you can breathe through your nose? Total tangent, but
that's a great idea. Now I'm going to use this to go back and look, and maybe we start product solving for it.
Or maybe it exists, but people are just it's just, you look like an idiot or something. I don't know. But so back to the coffee shop. So you were showing up to random coffee shops to learn the skills of essentially marketing, digital marketing, branding, all those things. Is that where we left off?
If I was to plug one coffee shop that had the most profound amount of impact,
I don't know. I just made that up.
That's close. Cosmic Coffee.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I would go to Cosmic all the time. Cosmic was massive in terms of there are people just bringing their laptops all the time and just being very friendly and open to just chatting. And I would sit there and I would work on Fran's website and Fran's course, and somebody else would walk in and somebody else would be like, oh, yeah, dude, I'm doing email related stuff. Oh, yeah, dude, I'm doing website. Oh, yeah, dude, I'm doing video. I'm like, this is crazy. All these conversations and all these connections. So Cosmic Coffee, shout out to that place.
Was there any skills in particular for the listeners that you found to have had the biggest impact, or to be the skills most people should know, or the things that you found in your own life that had the biggest just ROI?
This is where I think we can get into the lens of serendipity. I think the biggest ROI that I seem to have is following curiosity. And I think curiosity is the very first ingredient that goes into the recipe of serendipity. I think you have to follow that up with the second ingredient, what you brought up, as tenacity. Tenacity is connected with consistent iteration. You're not going to ever get something on the very first turn. Something is not going to be a home run. Things have to fail. And those added failures are what are going to lead you to the bridge of success. So I think the skill that you want to learn is based off of identifying that. And, we'll use, for an entrepreneur, a digital landscape. In the digital world, there's so many different skill sets that exist. You can be a copywriter. You could be a social media person. You could be a content creator from a video standpoint, a photographer, a website developer. There's so many different things. You can't be everything all at once. You can be everything, but it's going to take a lot of time. So lean into the curiosity for the problem that you're wanting to solve. So as in 2018, when I was 25 back then, I was young. Than I am now. I'm still young. I didn't pick up on this idea of don't do everything. So I was the person who was okay, I'm doing the website, but I'm also doing the video, and I'm also figuring out how to email market so that we can get this out. And it was good for me back then because it allowed me to spread myself thin enough to know base level skill sets, but then also know what is it that I enjoy. and what is it that I don't enjoy. And through time, I learned I love more of the content aspect. And then as time went along, I was like, I've done enough content. Now I enjoy being able to see the analytical aspect of the business from a digital stat. So now I love, email marketing is cool. It's like, okay, we put this content, we created the content. Now, is it hitting the metrics that it needs to? Why is it working? Why is it not working? But it stemmed, I would say, so much from curiosity taking me down the path based off my interests. It wasn't necessarily like, I need to go do this one thing. I knew that there's a cool solution to solve for, and I went after that solution, but then also just sticking with the thing that allowed me to feel like I'm lit up. And from my own personal anecdote, I think staying curious and constantly iterating on that curiosity is going to take you a lot farther for an ROI than trying to make a determination on what exactly is going to be the thing.
Here's why I love that so much. Literally just last night at the event, I was kind of telling the birth story of basically how that group got started. And because people are always curious, right? Is like they show up the event, they see it's just like really well curated. There's a lot of awesome people there. There's always like a fairly big turnout to all these events. And people are always like, how did this happen, right? And curiosity is so much of how that started, right? And it literally started as a walk around Lady Bird River of me and my buddy Dan just wanting to connect with this community of people because there wasn't anything like it. And we were just following our curiosities of like, well, how do we start a group like this? It was like, maybe let's just start it out as a walk. And we started doing walks around the Lady Bird River. And there were days where nobody showed up, right? Like not a single soul. But as we consistently kept like just doing it and following our curiosities and finding unique ways to do it, is then eventually it moved to hosting it at like Easy Tiger or other venues around Austin. And now it's grown into arguably one of the biggest networking groups in Austin. And it's funny because like it literally was just like curiosity to the point where at yesterday's event, I printed off all these stickers that say less thinking, more doing, because it's a mantra in my own life of I can be the kind of person that likes to, follow rabbit holes, think about things, plan, organize. I'm very left brain oriented. And so I need something to just be like, just take action towards those curiosities. And then you kind of figure out as you go, which is so much of obviously what you've done in your own life is like following the curiosities, but not just being curious, but doing something about it, right? Is like trying it, testing it, dabbling with it, seeing like if you like it, if you don't like it, is like, unfortunately, there's no shortcuts, right? It's like you just have to do the thing. And actually I got a message the other day from some girl and she's like, how do I start a meetup group like this? I want to open one in, I think she said it was Denver or something like that. And my response was literally less thinking, more doing. And she's like, oh, I know. And she's like, I know, I just need to like take action on this. And I was like, what else do you need to know at this point? Like, just start executing. Like, you already know what you want. You told me you want to do this thing. Do it. Like, no matter what that looks like. Whether that's like creating an account on Meetup. That could be step one. You know what I mean? And so I love that idea of curiosity and tenacity. I think those are massive pillars in all the people that I talk to on this show, just in general. And so I think that's great, man. I'm glad you continue to follow those. That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. And to the point of serendipity, I look at it as my life's mission based off of what you asked prior. Has your childhood impacted you in a certain way? My childhood and all the upbringing around it was putting me on a path of going down financial success and then having all these other things that come along with it. But it did not account for the rabbit holes that I could go into that had no defined path. And I think it is very pertinent that I believe every person who you've likely had on your podcast has gone down the path of curiosity and rapid iteration. And I think in doing so, they have a version of serendipity or two in their lives or more. And my mission now in life is to maximize serendipity. How is it that I could maximize serendipity, not just for myself, because I've done that through time to get to the position of saying, I have a path that is completely not what was foretold. And now I love this path that I'm on. And I just don't even know what is going to come up tomorrow and what rabbit hole I get to explore and all the fortunes that come out of it. So the constant iteration being the second ingredient is so vital towards curiosity, because you could be curious and then, as you said, less thinking, more doing. You could be curious and just spend all your time thinking about that curiosity. But if you want to get rid of that ingredient, you know, your dish needs a balance of ingredients. If you have just salt in it, it's going to become too salty of a thing.
I don't know, man. You should see how much salt I eat. I don't mean to derail you here.
Well,
but
salt, I guess, is maybe I should have picked another one.
Salt should be the main ingredient of every dish, which I would argue is also curiosity. But what are the other flavors that we need in this dish that you're talking about?
The second one is rapid iteration. The third one is openness / breaking down of the ego. I think in this process, you realize you come with assumptions, etc., towards a new moment in time, a new thing, and realizing that the construct of what you believe to have is maybe wrong, and okay with being completely wrong. And I think those three ingredients on a constant basis, if you show curiosity and you rapidly iterate and you're open to the fact that you might be wrong, and I suppose the final one is be vocal. Share what it is that is on your mind. The more you talk about it, the more you attract. And we're doing this because the more you talk, the more I talk, it attracts the people that feel aligned to this. So the four things put together, I think, create the vehicle of maximizing serendipity. I am very confident in the fact that this conversation between you and I is going to have some person impacted enough to reach out and say, this made me think about this version of myself in my life, and it has resulted in me wanting to do X, Y, or Z. I am 1,000% confident in the fact that that's going to happen. And, you know, I think if you look at our conversation throughout, it's probably going to be four things. You directed our conversation in a way where we were able to iterate, go back and sense. Like, I look at podcasting as one of the best ways to maximize serendipity. You're vocalizing. You're constantly vocalizing, and probably what you are on episode 100 is so different from what you are on episode number 1. And it just starts changing through time, but you're curious the entire time. So, yeah, those four things put together, I think, maximize serendipity. And
I'm really glad you broke that down because, yeah, I know kind of like how we started this entire conversation of how that is such a major pillar in your life. It's just that aspect of serendipity. Because even before we started recording, I was just talking about how I think a lot of people hear that and they think randomness, they think sporadic, they think just like, oh, I stumbled upon this amazing thing just out of the blue. But in reality is like, no, there's a formula to this. Like, it doesn't necessarily just happen out of the blue. Sure, things do in some way, shape, or form, but in a lot of ways, with the right ingredients, you can facilitate an environment for those things to be more likely to happen, which I think is a perfect segue for you, is like you have a kind of defining moment of serendipity coming to Austin, if I remember correctly.
I do. I want to touch on this part that you said for how people think it is something that's out of control and it just happens. For serendipity to take place, by its dictionary definition, is stated as a fortunate, happy accident that allows for you to feel more fulfilled, or something that took place that is a very happy accident that you were not looking for. And you're right that if it is an accident, then it's not something that you necessarily created. But for that accident to have meaning, means that you've had to have done something all leading up to that event, because you could have multiple accidents and those end up with no attached meaning. And for an accident to have the meaning of it being happy means you've had to put in all of the work prior. And that to me is maximizing serendipity. And I forget, sorry, what you had led us towards on the second part.
Well, I know you have kind of a more or less defining moment for you of serendipity, especially coming here to Austin.
Yeah, the one that I would say stands out the most for as serendipitous for me is back in 2020. I saw a post online. I believe it was through our friend Ross. It was like going to this birthday party, and just shared a birthday party event, and I was, kind of fed up of my 9 to 5. I was still working a 9 to 5, and Austin was catching me the bug of like, go explore, go find more things, go do more things. And I'd done the course with Francesca, and I was like, I still want to go meet more people and all this stuff. And I see this thing, and it's this birthday invite. I know nobody there, and I guess I know Ross is going because he saw it on social media somehow. I show up to this place, don't know anyone, see Ross, and it was the 29th or 30th birthday, 29th, I think, of this dear friend of ours, CJ Finley, at the Thrive headquarters. And I just show up and don't know who the guy is. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, show up to this birthday party and connected with him. And I was like, this guy is doing some dope stuff, bringing people together and whatnot. And I kept in touch loosely with him. And there were some events that got thrown, filmed some content for him here and there for these events, and just stayed, as friends loosely. And then a year, pandemic hits, things slow down, and it's like, okay, wow, like this is not great timing, whatnot. And then a year passes by. I quit my 9 to 5 in June of 2021, so it's going to be 2 years here in I think 2 weeks exactly. And I ended up, quitting my job, and I was just like getting super deep into content, and I was finding all ways to allow people to use content to facilitate their businesses. And I love sharing information. I love just allowing people to be like, oh, these are the tool sets to use. Use this to allow you to do this. And CJ and I got connected more and more, and I just loved spending time with him as a friend. There was no business related endeavors that we had an overlap. And we were just friends, and he told me about some cool projects he was working on, and he ended up telling me that he was running this festival in December, and he was like, oh, dude, we've got this festival. I'm at with this company out in West Austin, MSW. We are IV Lounge. We're also got this nutrition, but then we're trying to do this thing called How Do You Health, which is do health education for the masses. And we've got this festival that we throw where we bring on speakers from across the country, talk about various things health. And I was like, oh, this sounds cool. I'll come through. And I decided to show up to help CJ out as a friend, just because he was like, oh, can you just come through and let me know what's up? And we are currently using a switcher for this podcast that records all 3 cameras on here. I took that very switcher and took it to the festival and prepped with some other stuff, not knowing what all is going to happen. Just showed up fully prepped, and I set up the stuff for us, and it fortunately was a hit because it ended up capturing all of this content for all of the speakers that came through, and that was not something that they were prepared for. And it just led to an opportunity that I had no foresight in that moment in time of my life. I didn't expect anything out of that. I was focused on trying to find other specific clients associated with it. And then the festival became a hit. The team at MSW was like, this produced so much content for us that we just never saw coming. We want you on our team now. And MSW became a huge part of who I am. And not just from a business standpoint, it's completely transformed my life from a health standpoint. I now feel 2 years ago, not feel, I could look at data, blood tests, and say where I was 2 years ago to where I am now is night and day. And that started because of the very decision in that moment to say, yo, CJ does something cool. Let me go help him out with this something cool thing. I'm just curious what he's doing. I'll bring my stuff to help a friend. And that small desire to go help a friend furloughed into things that I never foresaw. And now I'd say that my parents' health, my sister's health, my own health is at a point that is far rapid than I could have ever imagined. But that's because now I got surrounded by people who take health as the utmost priority. So I went there to go help a friend, and now I just ended up with not only a business endeavor, but much bigger than business, a life endeavor. My health, my family's health is now taken care of in essence, because I have so much knowledge from the constant lunch and learns that John did. You know, MSW was doing lunch and learns every Friday. There's so much education through the podcasts that are out there, and all the network of people that come to the lounge within the health space. Suddenly I just, dipped myself into a world of learning about all things health that I never saw coming prior to this.
What I want people to get out of that is something I was talking to a good friend of mine, James Anderson, shout out to him just a few days ago, about the aspect of showing up with the mentality to add value. I feel like wraps up nicely your experience with showing up to the MSW people is that you knew this guy, you thought you could come and support and add value, and that was the pure intentions behind it, and it led to good things. And the reason that I bring that up, and I think it's important for people to hear, is that oftentimes it can go the other direction of you get invited to an event or you know about something that's happening. You're not super excited about it. You're actually not even that curious about it. You just kind of have some FOMO going on, and it's this thing that's like, yeah, I should probably go. And you show up, but you don't show up with the mentality of energy, of positivity, of wanting to help, of wanting to serve, of wanting to add value. And so I think that's a really important differentiator for people of paying attention to the things that you are actually genuinely curious about and are actually exciting for you and actually something or a community you want to be involved in. It's like I think about all the time of, no offense to anybody else out there in this town or people that I've talked to, but I've been invited on a lot of boat party trip tours lately, and cool people I like, generally speaking, but it's just not my vibe. And I know how I'm going to show up at an event like that. It's like, yeah, maybe I'll have some fun, but my intentions aren't like, oh, this is amazing, and like this is going to be the best thing ever, and I can't wait to meet all these amazing people. I'm more feeling like, ugh, that kind of feels like a lot, kind of feels like overwhelming. I don't really drink anymore. And so I think it's just important to differentiate that, right? Is like knowing the things that are genuinely like, yeah, this is exciting, I want to come and help and serve, versus like, oh, I just have FOMO if I don't show up. I think those are important to differentiate. But
it's massive. I think I came across a new acronym that I shared with my roommate yesterday or 2 days ago. I feel is very pertinent to share for the audience. FOMO is the term that we've all been exposed to up until now. There's a new term in town. It's JOMO.
Joy of missing out.
Joy of missing out.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that and I was like, this is incredible. That was the shift in mentality that I had in my mid-20s sometime, and it's boosted my life because I don't have to feel like I'm doing something for the sake of, I don't know, pleasing someone, or I don't even know what the complex nuance thing that goes into FOMO, but the removal of FOMO and just being aligned with who I am and doing things for the sake of me shows up with energy, like you said.
Especially in a town like this, man, where you could do all the things every day, all the time, but not honestly be truly present for any of them, which I think is a really important differentiator. Real quick, before we get to my rapid fire question round, is you've started a podcast, Serendipity Chronicles. Where do you see this going, and what's kind of the mission behind it?
Great question. I have to confess that I need more of the mantra put into my own podcast of less thinking, more doing.
Hell yeah.
because part of my journey as a content creator,
I'll get you a sticker. I should have brought one for you, but yeah.
content marketer, was in 2021 end of 2021, just started focusing only on podcasts, producing people's podcasts. And as I went along, I just got to the point of like, hey, I should kickstart my own. And then obviously I helped build this studio in here, and things associated with podcasts. I feel I'm very much in the trenches, but I was like, I want to start my own and base it around serendipity, the serendipity that people have created in their lives, the little stories that you hear about the things you didn't see coming that just took you down a path of incredible journeys. And that's what I want Serendipity Chronicles to be. The goal that I have with it is that I want to sit down with people and showcase those minute moments of curiosity followed with those iterations and openness that just led down this path that didn't see coming, and that led to this beautiful life of a happy accident. But I demystify that into, like you said, the word formula, so that the end listener can listen to it and go, these stories are kind of got a pattern to them. The pattern of like those 4 ingredients. And, I want it to be in a place where a person looks at it and goes, I could do this for myself, and I can create serendipity for myself. I am after stories. I love stories, and I think it connects people with one another with that. And I think that the podcast allows me to get very much into those specific type of stories. I have my own biases, nuance, that I think I'm a pretty good host. And I think that the thing that's holding the podcast back, myself, I have become very hyper obsessed with having spent so much time producing people's podcasts and having built this podcast studio, seeing a lot of podcasts. I just surround myself with podcasting all day, to where as a creator in my own head, I was like, oh man, like now I'm about to create my own podcast and I don't want it to be run of the mill similar. How do I make it very unique? And I have entrapped myself in this thing of making it unique, that it's currently been on like a pause aspect. I've still got churning through with great conversations, but I'm not ripping all the social media content and all the episodes to go through, because I've been focused on wanting to take these conversations and allow for it to show up on social media in a different format than just people sitting across one another, where in my mind, I created the construct of, I don't know if someone else wants to look at the screen and see the same old thing on their screen. So how do I, as a visual creator, make things different? And I've gone down this rabbit hole of animations, and I've gone deep down the rabbit hole, and it's probably time to get out of the trenches. And that's where I'm going to leave it at, is that with that. But I animations is where I am wanting to allow Serendipity Chronicles to go to the next step. I have run into a few hiccups, and so I'm using AI, and I want to break down how people can use AI to create their own animations. You and I have a podcast that we've done together. I've got some funny animations of you that I'm like, I can't, put Corey out into the world like these animations that I've done, because my animation skills are not good yet. But all of that goes back into more thinking. So I think I'm going to scrape that and just keep iterating, possibly in public, and just see what it comes up, because I think at the end of the day, these conversations are what spark stuff. So I'm going to have to take a step into that and just let the animations keep coming into the fold as I keep moving along. But I really do believe that the animations is the X factor that I see Serendipity Chronicles having for its unique value aspect on top of the stories.
I hope this is of value to you, and I hope this is to value of other listeners as well. But you said a word that I found interesting, and I learned this from Matt Choi, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is that you said, until it's good. Good is subjective. Mm. And so you took the words right out of my mouth at the end of everything you're just talking about there, of building in public. If I've learned anything from 100 plus episodes of podcasting and creating content and putting stuff out there, more often than not, the episodes I quote unquote think are good or bad are never accurate because those are subjective opinions, right? And so I love that idea of building in public, and I think a lot of people can learn from that, of that, yeah, we have this, for some reason, this belief of like what's perfect, what's good, what's bad. But if you laid out 10 people and you asked them what's good, they're all going to have a different opinion. And so I think that's just important to remember. So I hope that's helpful. But I have 10 rapid fire questions rounds. I don't know how familiar you are with the Health Hustle, but it is the first thing that comes to mind. You ready?
Ready.
What's your best business advice?
Keep learning from the people that are 2 or 3 steps ahead of you.
What's your best marketing advice?
Steal like an artist.
What's your favorite part about entrepreneurship?
Every day is like a new solution to solve for.
When are you the most productive?
8 to 12.
Who is your inspiration?
The younger me that I keep seeing.
Tell me one secret or something most people don't know about you.
This is one, it's going to be very funny because it's the first thing that I thought of. But I have the most unique ring finger in the world. I've never come across a person in this entire life that has the ability to do this. This is going to be a great clip. I can do that with both fingers.
The finger, okay, he's if you're not watching, he's like wiggling his finger and it looks like it's not a part of his body.
Nope. It's that was the first. I should have thought of something else. But
no, that was gold. That's never been on the show. Other than your finger, what would you change about yourself?
The thing that I would change about myself is how much time I spend thinking.
Dude, I got to get you one of these stickers. This is going to be an interesting one for you as somebody who's very in the tech space, but and you can't say ChatGPT, but what's your favorite app or resource right now?
OneSec.
What's that?
OneSec is a social media blocking app. It allows me to be so present throughout the day and use social media with very focused intention. As soon as you choose to open an app, it does this like slide up motion and then slide back down. It says breathe in and then breathe out. It takes about 6 to 8 seconds. And you can like even set it up on hard mode where if you choose to open the app, every time that you choose to open the app, it adds like 0.2 or 0.3 seconds to it over the span of the last 24 hours. And it shows you a counter that says you opened this app this many times in the last 24 hours. And then after it comes back down, it says, are you sure you want to continue? And then by the time you're done with that timer, you kind of have had a time to like take a breath, slow down and be like, do I really want to open this app or do I not? So I think that my dopamine, serotonin levels have become phenomenal in regards to social media usage after I have started incorporating OneSec.
Love that. I'm getting that. What's interesting about that, though, you're probably the 3rd or 4th interview I've done in a row now where somebody has brought up some sort of focus/productivity app is what they've brought up. So I feel like there's a trend here of people are struggling to focus these days. So thank you for that. When were you the happiest?
I would say the time that I end up spending most on the things that just drive my curiosity is when I'm the happiest.
Sounds about right. What's your favorite part about Austin and you can't say the people?
The sun sets from, I forget which bridge.
Pedestrian? Lamar?
No.
Congress?
There's the Congress, I'll go with that for now. But the one that I'm thinking about is the one that's far west. There is like
Mopac? I don't know.
But pedestrian, I'll go with that. Sunsets over the bridge.
Okay. Good answer. I have one last question. Before I ask that question, though, I want to acknowledge you. There's a word that you kept saying that I want to bring up and circle back to, connection. I heard you say that word a lot through this conversation, and I just want to acknowledge the fact that you are somebody that I feel like has made a lot of incredible connections, and people feel that and people know that. And I think it's cool for somebody like you who has just this unique technical background and can be very logical and like have a computer science degree and all these like AI technologies. For somebody who's in that space of what most people would say is more like technological, to always still err towards that aspect of connection and wanting to genuinely help people and connect with them and have conversations and learn their stories and share their stories. And I think that's a really unique combination. And you bring together just like this mirage of unique things that I don't think a lot of people have. And this is a terrible analogy, but it's so much of like the idea of the snowflake, right? Is that you have a very unique skill set that I think a lot of people can get value from. And I just want you to be aware of that. So
I appreciate you saying that a lot.
yeah, for sure. And I mean it. Before I ask my last question, though, other than your podcast, where can people find you?
On Instagram and soon come on YouTube. The thing that, as you broke all of this stuff down in my rabbit hole of animations, I am wanting to do video essays showcasing how AI has helped me productize a lot of stuff with the connection aspect that you're talking about, the build in public. I am currently breaking down on Substack in this very moment. This will be provided in the show notes, I'm sure, how I am building a card prompt game for connecting with other people using AI. I am using AI to build various scenarios for card prompts. One is associated with finding your purpose, creating serendipity. One is trying to do stuff with thriving in life. One has to do with healing. And I'm working on various decks, and I'm building this in public on Substack to showcase my prompts and what I'm doing for it, because I am going down the rabbit hole of wanting to productize and create various products, but connect it towards connecting with people.
The builder, man. That's such a word for you. It's so fitting. You're always building constantly. I love that. So my last question is, it's really whatever your best piece of advice is to your younger self. So let's say you were to go back to ground zero of your entrepreneurship journey and you were sitting on the shoulders of young Yash, and you were to whisper to Yash some sort of piece of advice that you could give them in the moment just to like make sure they're moving in the right direction and focusing on the right thing. What would you maybe tell younger Yash?
I'm going to go on a slight tangent. In my bedroom, I have this thing painted in the corner of my room. I got that painting from an image that Jack Butcher drew. Jack Butcher is the guy behind the famous Instagram account called Visualize Value. And he took a Confucius quote, I believe is who he gave that to. I could be butchering this and can correct this in the show notes. After, the quote says, "We are what we believe we are." And then in his caption, he wrote, "Expand." And the diagram he draws is one circle becoming a bigger circle, becoming an even bigger circle. It's like a thought pattern loop of think of yourself as big as possible. We are what we believe we are. That to me has played a huge role in allowing me to say, do not allow scarcity to come in. There's abundance. You are what you believe you are. There is a lot out there. What I would tell my younger self, since I've already said that and I have that as mantra, to stay focused specifically is a quote that I believe I said earlier in this episode, and I'm going to go back to: you can have everything. You just can't have it all at once. And I would repeat that over and over again. You can have everything. You just cannot have it all at once. I would take that to the younger version, stamp that in, and just tell myself, things are not going away. Just focus on one thing and keep doing it until it gets to the point of an end. And you've said, this is it. Now move on to the next. You don't have to worry about the fact that you're not working on this other thing. Just take it one thing at a time.
You don't have a tattoo, do you?
I don't yet, but I'm going to get my first tattoo.
Sounds like that could be a good one for you. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I would possibly, I'll put that in the realm of stuff. My first tattoo is going to be a rabbit jumping into a hole.
I love that so much. Yash, appreciate you. Thanks for joining the show. Thanks again, brother. Hey, friend, thanks for listening to the show. And if you have any feedback for me about the show or any other guests that you'd want to see in the show, definitely shoot me a message. I love engaging with my audience and figuring out how I can provide the best value possible to the people listening to this show. Before you go, I only have one ask of you, and that would be to check out my 3 Tips Tuesday newsletter. It's 3 marketing tips every Tuesday specifically for the health and fitness entrepreneur to help them attract new leads. If you press the link in the description, it'll take you directly to the archive of all my previous newsletters, and you can decide for yourself if it's something for you. If you end up finding it helpful, you can just sign up for the newsletter and you'll get it in your inbox every Tuesday. Thanks again, and keep hustling, my friends.